Hello and good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening around the world, and welcome to our virtual high-level forum of the United Nations Global Geospatial Information Management. I'm very happy that you are all with us. This is not how we originally had envisaged it, but I'm still very, very glad that we are able to connect virtually around the world and show that we are a strong professional community. It's all a little bit of a new world, and we are trying to get used to it. I can tell you that I never imagined that we would start this meeting from my second bedroom, but here we are doing it, and I can tell you that I put on a tie for the first time in 2 months. But otherwise, we are fine with the team in New York, and I promise you I will not get up so that you can see what I'm wearing below. But after these introductions, as I said, welcome to the High Level Forum. For the United Nations, the High Level Forum is very important because when we created the geospatial information mechanism almost 10 years ago, we made a distinction between the committee, which is of GGIM, which is more the parliamentarian a mechanism where we have to take decisions that are binding with the United Nations protocol, and the high-level forum where we really welcome everybody, all stakeholders, academia, civil society, the private sector, many friends that help us to do our work on global geospatial information management. This is now the 6th high-level forum, and we have traveled all over the world. It was supposed to be the first one in Europe. We have now been everywhere, and I'm very happy that we are together. It would have been so much nicer to be together physically, because obviously the interactions are also very important. But hey, we are going to do what we can. And I just heard that we have 700 people registered and maybe several hundreds listening to us right now. So again, welcome to everybody. Let me say a big thank you at the beginning to our partners in the Ordnance Survey and in the UK in general. The UK has been a very strong partner in our work on global geospatial information management. I mean, Vanessa Lawrence was the first chair. I remember that this meeting in London was actually born in a conversation with Nigel in Mexico in 2017, last time we were all together. And of course, now I had the pleasure of meeting Steve for the first time. Actually, this was also supposed to be different, and we just promised each other we still will have one day that coffee or glass of wine together. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank Ordnance Survey really for the fantastic work that they have done with us, first in organizing the physical meeting, and then when we had this challenging situation of switching over to this virtual format. And I'm just mentioning David and Claire in the background, who have done all the hard work. It is a difficult moment, but I also always say every crisis is an opportunity. It is definitely a data moment when all of us around the world are looking at our television screens now. We see numbers and maps to inform this current situation. So this morning, we will have various segments to discuss the geospatial landscape, the integrated geospatial information framework, and the future trends on geospatial information management. The latter two are two big pieces that will be also the theme of two subsequent full sessions in Tuesday 1 week and 2 weeks. So I invite everybody, if you like what you see today, to stay with us. And so I invite you this morning to a journey. We have speakers from around the world, so it will be a journey around the world. It will be a journey across various themes in the geospatial universe, and it will be a journey with different types of partners from our professional community. And again, I'm very happy to see everybody. Welcome on behalf of the United Nations. Welcome on behalf of my team. And it's my pleasure to hand over to Steve, from Stefan to Steve, the head of the Ordnance Survey. Please, Steve Blair.
Thank you, Stefan. It's a real pleasure to be here to support you and your team in the UN Secretariat on behalf of the GGIM community. As you said, my name's Steve Blair. I'm the CEO of Ordnance Survey, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome participants to this series of really important webinars. And I'd like to thank you all for your support for this virtual format for the High Level Forum. And it's such a shame that we weren't able to welcome you all in April as attendees at the event here in the UK. But I'm sure you understand the decision to move to this series of web events. I think from everybody's safety point of view, it was absolutely the right thing to do. But we still see the value in bringing together this global community to discuss our common problems and our shared solutions. I hope that today's session will be valuable for all of you, and you'll all be able to participate in taking this discussion forward. Over the last 18 months, our teams here at Ordnance Survey has been busy consulting, engaging, workshopping, researching, and editing the third edition of a review of the future trends in geospatial information management. I'm pleased to support the launch of this important piece of insight later today, and I know many of you will have contributed to and helped to shape it, so thank you very much for that. Having been with Ordnance Survey for a year now, I'd like to offer two brief observations on the work of UN-GGIM. The first is a personal reflection on the close nature of this community, the support for one another, and the sense of a common purpose which has shone through in these last few very difficult months. The second is that the work of this group, your work, is already widely recognized as being absolutely essential. But as the global community responds to the challenges of COVID-19, I'd like to encourage you to embrace the opportunity to demonstrate the leadership and the knowledge that makes geospatial knowledge so valuable to our economies, our environment, and our global society. Here in the UK, the acknowledgement of the role and value of geospatial thinking has led to the establishment of the Geospatial Commission to help develop and steer our national policy for location data and associated services. I'm really delighted to now hand over the reins and introduce my colleague Talia Baldwin, Director of the UK Government's Geospatial Commission. And I hope that we'll all soon be able to meet in person, either in London or elsewhere, to continue the important work of this community. Talia, over to you.
Thank you, Steve. And thanks very much, Stefan. Hello, everybody. I'd like to add welcome on behalf of the UK government to our colleagues from around the world. Echoing Steve's comments, it is a disappointment that we're not all able to meet in person, but thanks to Stefan and Steve and excellent colleagues, we were at least able to connect through digital means. And as I sit somewhere in London, physically distanced but digitally connected, I wonder if there's ever been a time in which our insights about location in relation to others have been more relevant. The growing awareness of the value of geospatial data is, in fact, behind the creation of the UK's Geospatial Commission. Set up in 2018 at the heart of the UK government to shine a light on the economic, social and environmental priorities that geospatial data can help support. The UK has a long legacy of excellence in geospatial data, with advanced geospatial data about air, sea, land, subsurface, informing a multitude of uses and driving our international partnerships. The Geospatial Commission's mission is to support those at the forefront of geospatial innovation in the UK, promoting widespread data use and improvement that can help tackle some of our biggest priorities. Over the last couple of years, in addition to the good work already going on in the UK, we've started to make some targeted interventions. These include improving and standardising geospatial data held in the public sector through investing in data upgrades and starting to bring together data held in different UK bodies. And we've been testing how best to provide access to data held outside of the public sector, where there is a benefit to all of doing so, investing in regional pilots that bring together data about underground utilities assets to help set us up for a national platform. One of the insights that geospatial data provides us with is that context is key. It might surprise you to learn that not everyone in government understands and believes in the importance of geospatial data. The current COVID-19 pandemic has brought its importance into sharp focus. Data innovations and public-private partnerships are helping us to monitor the spread of the disease, model and predict future spread, mobilize and coordinate response efforts, and monitor the impact and compliance of policy interventions. We're seeing a growth in the real-time use cases of geospatial data applications through improved and accessible sensor, mobile location, and consumer and citizen data to improve strategic coordination and response. As you would imagine, the Geospatial Commission is interested in what we can learn from this and the longer-term impact of the use of this data and associated technologies. For this reason, the launch of the 3rd edition of the Future Trends report could not be more timely. Ordnance Survey has supported the revision of this document in what continues to be a period of global challenge and opportunity. I'm delighted that one of our commissioners, Edwina Dunn, will be providing her reflections on this as part of the panel that Ordnance Survey will chair on the 9th of June webinar. I'd also like to warmly congratulate the GGIM community on the publication of the implementation guide for the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework. This important framework foreshadows and informs the UK's own geospatial strategy, which we're aiming to publish later this year. The UK's strategy marks our own journey towards a national location data framework, consistent with the IGIF principles. It raises questions about the future for geospatial data policy. Where does value in the geospatial market lie, and how can this best be realised? How do we secure improved access to geospatial data while keeping it secure where needed? What can we do to enhance skills and capabilities in this sector? How do we tackle concerns about privacy and ethical use of people's geospatial data in future? And our strategy will set out a roadmap to help answer these questions. But we know that we are, and always seem to be these days, in a period of rapid innovation driven by technology and by the urgency to rethink how geospatial data can be deployed. And these questions are increasingly part of a global debate about data policy and the importance of geospatial data. So, although unfortunately we are unable to have this conversation in person right now, I very much hope that we can continue to have it, and I'm grateful to Stefan and Ordnance Survey and the committee of experts in providing us with this occasion to do so. I hope the session goes really well. Thanks, Stefan, for the opportunity to open it. Handing back to you.
Thank you, Steve and Thalia. And this is always the critical moment where I must not forget to unmute myself, but I'm getting better in this new challenging world. Thank you to both of you. Thank you for the eloquent introductions, for sharing the UK perspective. And as I said, the UK has been a very special partner in this journey for global geospatial information management for the last 10 years, and you're still fully committed, and I'm certainly looking forward to working closely together with you. And Steve, you're absolutely right. You said it is a shame but that we can't meet physically, but as we promised each other, we will do that very soon. Thank you also both for being very executive in your time. We are actually a little bit ahead of schedule, which is good, because I was told that I'm going to be paid at the end of this event as a function of whether I was able to keep everybody on time. So let me give you a little bit the overview of what is going to happen next. We are going to go immediately into segment number 1, which is the geospatial landscape. And I have three fantastic panelists that will help us to take that first panoramic flight where we are at this point in time. They will make 10-minute introductions and presentations, and you, the audience, you will have opportunities to send in questions, and I will see them here on my screen and hope to make a selection of interesting questions or have some questions by myself. So the purpose, and then we'll take a little break, and then we will continue with segments 2 and 3, which will look at the 2 major pieces of work that we are all focusing on at this moment in time: the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, the strategic overview, and the 3rd edition of the Future Trends document that was already referenced here before. So I invite you now to move on to segment 1, which is the geospatial landscape. I mean, as I said, one of the fun of the United Nations work is that you get to invite, that we don't have any power at the United Nations. I learned that very, very quickly, but we do have one particular power, and that is our famous convening power, is that we can put a table in the middle of the room and invite everybody to come, irrespective of where they're coming from geographically or what their professional backgrounds is, or if we feel that it, or what their sectoral background is. If we feel that somebody has an important contribution to make to what Steve called recognizing the common problems and finding shared solutions, we will invite them. And this was the great pleasure with the global geospatial community. And I have 3 speakers now from this global geospatial community, namely Mrs. Rosamond Bing from the Kingdom of Tonga, who is up very, very late. It's almost tomorrow for her, and on her beautiful Pacific island. And she is currently the co-chair of the GGIM committee. And then we also have Oliver Chinganya, who is the director of the Africa Center for Statistics in the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. And then we have Mr. Sanjay Kumar, our friend and partner from the private sector, who has made so many important connections for us and is, of course, an information and communication specialist, and is speaking on behalf of the World Geospatial Information Council. So these 3 speakers present a global panorama from different parts of the world, different perspectives. From a national perspective, Rosamond, Oliver from an international, regional perspective, and Sanjay from a private sector perspective. So I think between the 3 presentations, we will get a very good panorama of how these 3 important and knowledgeable speakers see what are the current possibilities, what are the new trends technologically, what can we do, and what should we do? What are the policy challenges? What are the problems that we are trying to solve? And how are we going to put these 2 things together? What we actually can do, are capable of doing, and what we should be doing. So without further ado, I invite, in the order, Rosamond, Oliver, and Sanjay to make your presentations, to give us your view of where we are at this moment with respect to the geospatial landscape. Enjoy the flight. And Rosamond, the floor is yours.
I'm speaking as a Chief Executive Officer of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. It is a jurisdiction where we have a centralized land administration. So under my jurisdiction, lands administration, survey services, land and geographical information system, planning, and natural resources. So as Talia had referred to earlier, we are essentially a ministry that's based on location. So our engagement with the UN-GGIM has been quite a fundamental development for the government in terms of how we administer the geospatial information space. What I wanted to talk about today, I had several slides I had set up, but I think I'll skip through those slides because I'm going to steal the thunder of Greg, who will be speaking later during this session on the integrated geospatial information framework. But what I wanted to focus my discussion on today in my presentation was fundamentally to focus on the importance of geospatial information as being fundamental to ensuring that the decision-making is based on sound and reliable information. When I first started in the ministry, this area, it became quite obvious that there were gaps in harnessing the opportunities for the geospatial information management. But we were also very, very lucky to have made contact with the UN-GGIM team and to be part of the journey of the IGIF. And whilst that will be discussed later in the session, I wanted to share how, from a government perspective, and from a ministry that is quite fundamental to the economic and the social development of a developing country, how the IGIF has played a very key role. It has provided the impetus for Tonga to become one of the countries that's a pilot project, so that Tonga, together with our neighbor Fiji from the Pacific, are in the process of drafting our country action plans. Now, the IGIF has then provided for us the fundamental platform from which we've been able to draft this country action plan. So some of the slides that you will be seeing are based on presentations that will be made later, but this is, I'm sharing this because this is the platform from which Tonga and some of our neighbors in the Pacific region are using the IGIF. Talia referred earlier to the implementation guide being published. Tonga has skipped ahead of the IGIF as part of a pilot project to look at applying the guidelines in terms of drafting country action plans at the national level. So the IGIF has helped us to achieve several things. It has helped us to achieve, establish a process that promotes ownership and strengthening national capacity. And in this regard, the project of the country action plan drafting, UN-GGIM provides a modest funding capacity, but what it does, it also provides us with a technical assistance, and most of the work and most of the templates are our responsibility. So we are the ones who do most of the work on the ground. So I think it's a process that's fundamental to ensuring that we own the work that we're doing, and what we come out with at the end of the day is a product that's suited to the context of Tonga, and we can implement it as we go. So it sets the scene, the IGIF sets the scene for engaging our stakeholders within ministries, relevant stakeholders, whether they're from within government or private sector. And it has provided us with the ability to be able to discuss the vast array of issues that challenge us in the geospatial information management space. And I think it has provided us with the technical ability and technical capacity to be able to discuss these strategic pathways, the 9 strategic pathways, and all of the details. We're able to share it with our stakeholders. We're able to engage. We're able to encourage feedback. And where we are at now is we are looking forward to finalizing our country action plan for presentation to the cabinet. In terms of one of the critical issues that I have appreciated through this journey, and from a government perspective, is that it is government's role fundamentally to provide the enabling environment for geospatial information management. So that through this work we've been doing with the IGIF and the country action plan, the partnerships and the engagement has been something that's been very key to the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Our engagement with our public sector partners, we have worked, brought on board private sector as well here, also the civil society, and we've also shared a lot of the work that we're doing with our regional partners in the Pacific as part of a regional body of which I'm currently chair, which is the Pacific Geospatial and Survey Council. So I have quite confident with the model that IGIF has provided, and it encompasses all aspects of geospatial information. For the Kingdom of Tonga, it's been a very, very useful tool and has engaged the government in working with the stakeholders. Now, one of the important issues as well, I think, with the IGIF as well, with the work that we've been doing, it has also enabled us to network far more than we would have been able to. So we have more friends, more colleagues that we can email, we can contact, we can seek technical assistance from. So we are looking forward, once the COVID-19 sort of settles down, we will then finalize the work on the country action plan. In terms of geospatial information management, with COVID-19 preparedness here in the Kingdom, our ministry is part of the shelter cluster, member of the shelter cluster. Our responsibility and our contribution has been to share the resources that UN-GGIM and all of our partners have shared with us by email. So we have shared those resources with the Ministry of Health, with the National Emergency Management Committee, and we are now in the process of providing more public awareness to the Ministry of Health and the Emergency Committee in terms of the assistance, the technical assistance that the ministry can provide. So I'll just skip through the slides quite quickly because you'll have more information on that later. I just wanted to focus on one particular slide, and that's the slide that's coming up on the alignment of strategic goals. And I'm sharing this particular slide because it provides a sort of cascade of how we are approaching our country action plan. So at the international level, we are relying on our government's responsibilities to ensure that the SDGs are achieved. We're working with the IGIF information framework. So we're just getting to the conclusion of my my presentation, and the last slide that I'd put up is really to just demonstrate how we have been using the IGIF and all international, regional, and national policies and frameworks, drawing that all together, drawing out what aspects of those policies and plans are relevant to geospatial information management in drafting our country action plan. So I must say that without the IGIF as a framework, we would have struggled and we wouldn't be where we're at today. So we're quite pleased to be able to conclude and complete that work. And we're looking forward to that in the next 2 months. That's all I have to share for now, and looking forward to any questions that comes our way. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosamund, and thank you for greeting us from tomorrow by now, and for your always very special perspective from how our work that we are doing in the United Nations and all over the world can be helpful in the context of a small island developing country. So that's it's very encouraging already that we heard today that the framework that we are developing is useful as an organizing framework and integrating framework, both for a country like the United Kingdom and Tonga. So we must be doing something right at the United Nations here. Without further ado, I give the floor to Oliver in Addis. Oliver is, of course, my brother in the United Nations. I mean, he is the director of the Regional Africa Office, and of course, a very experienced and eloquent ambassador of the African situation. Oliver, the floor is yours for your perspective.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I hope everyone is able to hear me.
Yes.
Thank you. I will be talking on the geospatial landscape, giving a UN perspective. As Stefan has mentioned, I am the director of the African Center for Statistics at ECA. And one of the sections of the center is actually one that deals with geospatial, which is, we call it geospatial information management section. So I'll take you a few slides and sort of try and make myself understood on 5 points. I will speak to the geospatial information nexus issues and policy drivers for special data needs. I also look at the challenges and what are the critical issues. And then I also go on to look at the global efforts to improve geospatial at the global level in terms of information management. And then we'll look at the benefits from the global point of view and also from the integrated framework. And finally, just to look at the way forward in terms of priorities and strategies and so forth. So, so from where we stand in the UN, we see quite a few things that seem to be sitting together, what we would call the nexus issues. Here, there's the need for specially enabled information to address rapidly and respond to some of the key global challenges such as climate change, disaster management, and so forth. We also see that there are changing roles of governments in a maintenance of growing capability of the private sector in particular, and looking at how they actually reduce the influence of governments. We see also a weakness in the coordination among member states in Africa, and I think perhaps this also applies to other regions, between member states and international organizations, and in particular those that deal with geospatial. Now, one of the things that in the UN we strive to do is coming up with what we call a one UN approach. And we're hoping that even for the fragmentation that we see with the geospatial information can actually leverage or benefit from the UN reforms that deal with the coming up with one approach to minimize the fragmentation that are there in the geospatial. Now, as you picking up from those fragmentation, there are several challenges. As you can see from the screen, there are a number of agencies. Each one of those work on geospatial activities. You have the regional cartographic conference in America, and you have one, the Committee of Development Information. You have the group on Earth observation, and so forth and so forth. All of them having to do something. Now, the challenge that we have on the continent in Africa in particular, we also have what we call regional economic communities. And if you look on the right side of this, the slide that you have there, you'll actually see that an economic commission, for instance, the ECOWAS, this is the West African Economic Commission there. Within there are several others. There's actually another one that deals with the monetary and finance, UMEWA, and so forth. If you look at the one in SADC, the East African Community, the SACU, there's several communities, but the countries that are in there, they are either participating in more than one regional grouping, so to speak, and also more than one geo agency that is also involved in there, which makes it really a challenge because you see the fragmentation there. Similarly, when you go to what one would call the contemporary critical issues, here there are a number of things. First of all, I think around the policies, you see there's a lot of duplication because each of those agencies that I mentioned, they're coming up with their policies, and therefore rendering into redundancies, and coordination becomes a problem. There's also the issue that countries are also faced with in terms of data, the accessibility, how to transform that data, making it also available, issues of technical perspective, so to speak, in terms of tools, standardization, interoperability, all these are challenges as well as the capacities. Now, one interesting thing on the continent, I think that, I'm sure most of you as geographers and geospatial experts, is that 2.5% of the continent is that what is only mapped on the continent. Only 2.5%, the rest of it is not mapped. And therefore you see that data is actually very poor in that sense because not much of the continent is mapped. We see a fragmentation of the frameworks that I talked about in terms of poor interoperability, lack of standardization that I talked about. When it comes to applications, you see a duplication of efforts, several applications being made available. I also talked about issues of capacity. Again, an area where we actually see quite a lot of challenges there. And let alone just the governance and also the coordination that takes place within that area. Now, how do we get to deal with some of these things in terms of integration and also addressing the common frameworks? Well, I think that there is need to put in place policies, infrastructure and institutional arrangements that adopt cooperative multi-stakeholder approach to production. I think there's need to unlock the hidden potential in data in particular, which I also mentioned. The need to improve the regional scale development decision-making processes to ensure that the data is made available and easily available, for policy, for investment, and so forth. And of course, empowering the users in as much as possible to have access to this data. But to do all these things, there are three things one can look at. First of all, we're looking at what would be the needs. I think the needs have to be user-driven. It has to be the user that are actually needing the information that is required to ensure that they own the process and that they're able to sustain, because that's what they would like to have. Then there's also the issue of political support, where you need to strengthen the governance. That includes harmonization, coordination, and strengthens strengthening the existing initiative and frameworks that exist. And then finally, the issue of operational environments. Here, ensuring that whatever is put in place is actually sustainable and develop the necessary capacity that is required to run whatever initiative that has been put in place. Now, when one looks at where we've come from, one sees a very long trajectory that starts from 1961, moving from what one would call from cartography as a standalone activity to information development, and now to the integrated frameworks. And I would like to concentrate perhaps at the time in 2015 when the UN-GGIM resolution was actually made at the UN. You see really critical movements going on there, because in 2017, then an action plan is put in place for the GIS-4SD. This is an action plan strategy for integrated GIS and statistics. And then finally, in 2018, we have the IGIF, with several things there, 7 underpinning principles, 8 goals, and 9 strategic pathways. In terms of what is going on at the global level, in terms of the efforts that the global is doing on geospatial management and is transitioning from the spatial data information infrastructure to GIF, couple of things here. First of all, I think what needs to be recognized is that no matter where we are, the need for a global framework for geoinformation management to ensure that reliable spatial-enabled information is easily made available in support of other needs at the regional and as well as national level is really, that is very, very important, and that remains a need at all levels. First of all, the recognition that despite all these efforts, for instance, at ECA and other partners have made several progresses in developing what one would call the spatial data infrastructure. However, the progress here has been very, very slow. The spatial enablement of the services that societies need is also not yet that achieved. There's been an ambiguous availability of relevant spatial data and information as a common good, if one would put it that way. And therefore, we want to ensure that we put it in place spatial enabled services that need to incorporate geoinformation and location into solving problems. And with all this, you actually see that these, if they will be resolved, they would lead into the concept of an integrated geospatial information framework to be able to move forward, going forward. So key things there is the issues of data being addressed, issues of the policies that needs to be put in place to address the infrastructure, institutional arrangement, the frameworks, and so forth. But more importantly is the people themselves, having the necessary capacity to drive the process and be able to navigate on all the initiatives that have been put in place. Now, what would be the benefits, global as well as from the integrated framework? So from where I sit, from the policy point of view, we see policymakers can benefit from the right information at the right moment if it's given to them in the manner that is required. From an institutional point of view, we see the policy framework shall help develop the cooperative multi-stake approach to geoinformation, ensuring that they are strengthened along the lines of the prevailing networks and ensuring that the resources issues are also addressed. From the technological point of view, I think that the integrated geospatial framework can assure strong transfer of related applicable technology that will enable them build their own technologies as well as systems. And from the societal point of view, we can build coherent, seamless, and equivalent spatial-enabled information in an essential preconditions of setting up a coordinated policy and strategy for the regional and on the issues that are really, really of importance, both at national as well as at global level. Now, how do we get there? I think there are certain things that we need to advance at regional level to build the necessary efforts to ensure that the objectives or the purposes are data-oriented, they are structured, and the comprehensive data foundations are put in place, that they're consistent, they're comparable and compatible, both, I mean, at all the levels, at local, national, regional, as well as at the global level. And that, if you look at there are various areas, what one would call parcels, which we can actually address to be able to be major vehicles for delivery. We also think that there is need to think about common geographies. Here I'm talking about updating and sharing common administrative boundaries, responding to the Sustainable Development Goals. Here focusing much more on building on holistic and active approach, which is all inclusive, and then also leveraging on the 2020 rounds and which will be able to foster geospatially enabled sensors and so forth. Again, the three key issues really here, if you want to look at that, the statistical geographical integration, geospatial integration, is the issue of people, business, and location. And all this, if they are put together, they'll then be able to inform one would call the statistical indicators maps, and also allow the visualization that is required by the policymakers and also as and other stakeholders. In terms of how we see the future going forward, I think that there are things that all of us have observed that at the international level as well as at the regional level, things have changed. And if you heard from the presenter from Tonga, you can see the things that they've been able to do over time. So I think we see political support, first of all, ensuring that the political buy-in into the work that we're doing, that we develop indigenous capabilities, ensuring that the new models, business models that are put in place, leveraging on various agencies that are available at national level, the mapping agencies, the private sector, and so forth, but also building on what one would call constructive partnership. And many times I know they want to call this trusted partnership, because if you don't have the right people, it's very difficult to actually deliver on what you want to buy. But over and above, I think what is much more important is the national efforts that needs to be put in place, the investment that governments have to put in place there. And that if we put on this place, we'll be able to take advantage, for instance, on the policies in Africa that have been put in place, the institutional arrangement that I talked about, the guiding principles that have also been put in place. I think all these are put together and ensuring that there is a holistic approach in terms of capacity building to be able to really move in the direction that is required and provides integration between statistics and geoinformation. In terms of the emerging trends, I want to speak to three things. One is the improved data acquisition, processing, and dissemination. Here, what we see is that it's mainstream the services delivery access to satellite imagery, volunteer geographic information. Here, individuals becoming more and more involved in the process and owning the geospatial information itself. On the consistent of methodology, I think, and tools, borrowing much more from the cloud computing, real-time application, visualization of mapping features, and location of based mobile services. And the third one is the comprehensive, holistic, and vision-driven education. And I think issues of spatial awareness in ensuring that you build the necessary awareness among the citizens, and that they have the necessary skills will be very critical. And of course, the empowering of the community and making sure that the decision makers are also aware. So just to conclude, the way we see it at in the UN, first of all, is that the international and continental landscape are changing. I think all of us now acknowledge that the landscape is really changing, and therefore there is need for consistent adaptation and also adjusting efforts that would foster the dialogue between the governments, the NGOs, the academia, and the private sector, to be able also to appraise the best practices both in legal as well as policy instruments, and not forgetting the institutional management models as well. And then also to putting efforts to develop technical solutions, standards, interoperability of systems and data, and share mechanisms that guarantee the geospatial information and services are accessible by everyone. But of course, these will require that you have the national spatial data infrastructure that operates and benefits users' full potential. And there is a good commitment at the government level and those stakeholders. They're able to provide the necessary collaboration and working together with the partners. And of course, the issue of sustainability. A lot of times we talk about putting in place good initiatives, but if you don't put the necessary tools to sustain or the mechanism to sustain, we'll not be able to achieve what we want. So this is how we sit from where we sit in the UN. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Oliver, for your broad perspective, and also, of course, always the very specific African perspective. And one topic that is very dear to my heart, of course, all our hearts, is the integration of statistical and geospatial information. Okay, we want to keep as much time as possible for at least a quick exchange of some questions. So without further ado, I give the floor to Sanjay, our friend from the private sector, to give us an industry perspective. Sanjay, it's your turn.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Stefan, and the UK government for inviting me to speak to you this today. It's been some time since we met in person, and the things are changing. Everything is changing so fast. We're looking at change in the environment and ecology. I can see that slides. Look at this picture, wherein a friend of mine sent this picture, who took this picture from almost 100 miles away from these mountains, and he could take this picture from a cell phone. It was so clear. And we also, a lot of new pictures are coming around where we can see, the nature very close to the harbors. But what has also changed is the humanitarian challenge. This is what is the status of our aircrafts. They're all grounded. And then our tourist places are kind of deserted. And stadiums have been used for running COVID hospitals. So that's the kind of, the humanitarian challenge we are faced with. And these challenges are making us change our behavior, be it the social behavior where we are changing our purchasing pattern, our individualistic versus social behavior. Political economy is changing, where we're talking of live versus living. We're talking about collaboration and globalization and localization. We're talking about development and environment. The debates are changing, and so as the changing debate around geospatial landscape, it is becoming more and more mainstream, and it is becoming more and more integrated in nature. So that's what is the kind of preface I wanted to share with you as the kind of changing environment we live in. Let's look at how the geospatial industry has actually responded to. First of all, I must applaud the geospatial heroes worldwide. Many of our geospatial professionals have been working either from home or on site to help streamlinely servicing the essential services. We safeguarded our employees. Our industry has safeguarded our employees. They enabled the clients to work from home. And how they did it, they provided data and software, and the licenses are available at home now. You can actually use those licenses without any cost and operate from home. So multiple license systems have been given by our industry. Streamlining operations, our companies actually helped streamlining the operations. You can just imagine that the amount of utilities and essential services we have been consuming while we are sitting at home, and all that is being brought to you in a kind of undisturbed manner. So there is some people who are working on those projects, And we are also delivering e-learning tools and supporting our partners in the United Nations or into various universities or the governments to consistently monitor about this development. A host of organizations took advantage of spatial analytics at this time. The governments took advantage of analytics to inform the citizens. Health organizations analyzed the spread of the disease. Academic institutions have been working towards using these platforms to provide data in an open environment. Media has been using maps for telling their stories, telling us about what's happening. Multilateral organizations have been assisting the communities, and again, they are making use of the maps. And then the tech companies, they have opened their heart and they are making geo for good. So a lot of tech companies are delivering geospatial knowledge for good, and that's how the host of organizations across different stakeholders are making use of the spatial analytics to help us fight in this time. Moving further, you can see that location has become so important and so integrated to our lives that all over the world, you can see the dots where the applications of geospatial technologies has been used. And this is just my information. I'm sure that it has been used across everywhere. But this is the information which I've been able to map so far, that dashboards or apps have been used by the governments and authorities across worldwide. And you also look at the tracking capability. At this moment, more than 1 billion people are being tracked. It might be disturbing a little bit of privacy concerns, but at the same time, it is so important at this moment to track the spread of the disease, as well as track the and monitor the developments. So almost more than 1 billion people have been using applications who are they using it for actually understanding them better, understanding their neighborhood better, understanding the risk they are into better. So this is a beautiful service which the location has brought to us. Let's look at the challenges. It's not that this situation has not, kind of offered us the challenges. We have got a lot of challenges. Information explosion. It has led to a chaos which was very difficult because we did too late and too little. We did really too late and too little, because had we as geospatial community or the authorities who could have used the power of geospatial knowledge in December, January, we would have saved a lot more lives. We would have contained the spread. That is the kind of power spatial analytics could have brought to the epidemiologist as well as the various authorities. So yes, I would like to say that we did too late and too little, and now we are basically using this information more for predictive analytics, as well as modeling the likely threat and monitoring in real time. But had we used the same thing in about 3 months back, things would have been different. But how and why did we not use that? We did not use that because the data was not available at one place. The data was in silos. They were not talking to each other. And the technology companies did not take lead into geospatial sector. So now we have a lot of integration of data going on. It is statistical information, social information, behavioral information, or the geospatial information. All that put together is helping us understand this situation better. Yes, we did have a lot of policy barrier as well. We all know that the geospatial knowledge is being restricted in most of the countries, especially the high quality and real-time monitoring knowledge. And we have the data privacy policies, we have data sovereignty policies, we have data restriction policies. And that was the reason why we were not in a more integrated platform and in a very transparent manner to everybody. So what's the next generation geospatial enterprise landscape to me? Thanks to COVID, although we did not anticipate that something like COVID will come to make us realize this. But and maybe some of us were very lucky that Geospatial Commission had anticipated, and they already had a commission to look into the integrated geospatial platform or collaborative approach to address the national goals. And that is what is now the need of the hour, to look at the next generation geospatial enterprise. How this next generation geospatial enterprise is going to look like. Geospatial Media, in partnership with UNST and another 17 partners across the world, from the government, from the civil society, and from the industry are working together to develop this next generation geospatial knowledge platform. I would like to thank John Kedar, Greg Scott, Derek Clark, and other partners here who are helping us develop this vision of geospatial knowledge infrastructure. So how does it look like? Geospatial knowledge infrastructure, what we are thinking for the next generation has to be a decentralized system. It has to have the real-time data processing capability. It will have analytical capability. It will have predictive and prescriptive modeling capabilities. And it will also deliver no data, but deliver knowledge. It will deliver actionable intelligence for the consumers. Consumers could be citizens, governments, businesses, as well as any other development sector player. So we're looking at a very large, domain collaboration of data infrastructure, foundational data, positioning infrastructure, allied information enterprise, which could be in the form of weather, environmental information, building information modeling, or business enterprises. But moving to the real-time information data, which is like citizen-generated data, commercial service providers, Earth observation, IoT, and a lot of information which are coming in the form of apps. So a geospatial knowledge infrastructure will be able to integrate all that data, process all that data through the machine learning platforms to make it more knowledgeable. Look at how the integration of the policy framework will look like, or may have an impact on this is, we are looking at integrated geospatial policy framework. Some of our previous speakers also talked about it. We have policies which are topographical policies, or earth observation policies, or photogrammetry policies, or land information policies. At the one side, we have to look at all the professional geospatial communities to come together and develop an integrated geospatial policy framework. At the same time, when we are making our policies, we have to align our policies with other mainstream players, be it ICT, innovation, trade. So innovation and technology policies, open and linked data policies, pricing policies, data sovereignty and protection policies, personal privacy policies, intellectual property rights, and emergency and safety protocols. All these domains have acknowledged the greater value of geospatial information in addressing the sustainable development goals, in addressing the national emergency situation, in addressing the national development agenda. So we have to look at the landscape from a much broader point of view, where you are seeing on the one side geospatial information and geospatial policies, and then you are looking at integrating that with real-time information framework as well as policies. Look at the spatial dimension to the data ecosystem. As the foundation for data, a spatial dimension has to be added to the entire data ecosystem of the nation. And this goes from nation to region to global. The whole concept of good governance, accountability, transparency, efficiency, which are the national goals, and for which we create data ecosystems, and that data ecosystem has to be empowered and enabled by the spatial dimension. And looking at how we can achieve that is basically through the partnerships and collaboration, collaborative engagement with multiple stakeholders, be it from any aspects of the government or business or the development sector, partnership with user departments, equity inclusive approach, co-creating geospatial knowledge infrastructure through public-private partnerships, and define scope and mechanisms as well as business models of those partnerships. It cannot be just the partnership for the sake of doing something good. It has to be built onto the business goals. So that's the kind of geospatial knowledge infrastructure we are kind of propose. We are working in this direction, and that's what is our intent. Looking at what is the connect of geospatial knowledge infrastructure with IGIF, which is the theme of the day. Look at what I just showed you in the last slide. If you look at IGIF framework, you'll find that almost every pathway has sub-component already inbuilt into the GKI concept. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that IGIF is a great national strategy or the global strategy, and we through the GKI is trying to expand that and make it more integrated with the business community, make it more integrated with the mainstream economy as well as society, and try to bring a platform which is a much agile, much vibrant, and much interactive and much knowledge-oriented platform. With this, I would like to thank you all for this opportunity, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Sanjay, and thank you all to all the three presenters for what I promised to be a panoramic flight. And that was a great introduction. And I think one indicator of how good it was and thought-provoking it was is I'm struggling on my screen here with 22 questions at this moment in time, and which is a good thing. Please keep your questions coming. But we also have to have a bit of an eye on the clock in terms of time management. So here's my proposal. The good news is that this was the appetizer. This was the warm-up. All of the topics that we were touching on, the IGIF and the future trends, of course, will be discussed in the second and the third segment of today, and actually in the second and the third virtual meeting next Tuesday and the Tuesday afterwards. So let me be a little bit naughty. If we don't answer all of your questions, I hope you will come back for more to either the later segments today or to the next sessions next week. Let me make the following proposal in order to get also back on track on time. As I said, there were 22 questions. One practical question I can answer already. All the slides and the material will be made available, and also your questions are not lost. They are very valuable to us. We will look through them, and as I said, we will redirect them to the more specialized sessions. But let me pick two aspects and suggest to run quickly, and I hope my panelists will support me in that, so that we also get a little break and then move on to the next segments. If everybody from you, I'll give you 2 minutes each, and the two questions I want to distill from the rich list of questions is, number one, everybody talks about how COVID is a crisis but also an opportunity. Which is the one thing that you think out of the current situation we can take advantage of and do to move our geospatial management forward? And the other aspect that comes time and again is policy support. I mean, political support, sorry. We are in everything we need to do and we want to do, we need political support, and that is sometimes a struggle. So what is your key suggestions to improve the dialogue with politicians and get their support? So these two things, what's the biggest opportunity element in the current situation, and how do we get more political support? 2 minutes each, and we follow the order that we had. So Rosamund, you're first, ladies first.
Thank you very much for the questions, and thank you, Stefan, for condensing it into two questions. From my perspective, from a government perspective, my reply would be the COVID-19 has provided the opportunity to further emphasize and focus on how critical geospatial information management is. Whilst Tonga remains very lucky to be still COVID-free, it has provided us with the opportunity to use the resources that's been shared from from the other countries, and it has helped us to make decisions earlier on that has allowed us to be in this situation. In terms of political support, as a member of the National Emergency Management Committee, it's also quite critical in terms of discussions, in terms of decision making, in terms of looking at solutions and providing support fundamentally to the Ministry of Health, is just again emphasizing the importance of reliable information, accurate information, or at least being able to look at the information, distill from that information what we think is appropriate to us and what's relevant to us, and to assist in the decision making. And most importantly, to ensure that the communities are safe and that we're providing the support to health. So I think that's the opportunity that the Kingdom of Tonga has had. And I think the fact that we're COVID-free is testament to that support that we've provided from this ministry. Thank you.
Yes, and please stay that way. Stay healthy, stay safe. Warmest greeting, literally, to you and your beautiful island. Oliver.
Yes, on COVID, I think really like the delegate from COVID, from Tonga said, has provided an opportunity, really a big opportunity in the sense that we can now begin to see that technology is the way to go. If we talk about geospatial and statistical integration, on the statistical part, the operations are almost have come to a halt because most of the work you have are physical. You have to go physically to a place and collect the information. But if we were to use technology and invest a little bit more technology, a lot of the data information can actually be curated without having to physically be there using the tools that are available. On the political support, I think this is the time also governments should actually invest much more in technology, in the tools that are required for geospatial. I talked about the mapping of the continent, which is about 2% of the continent is mapped. So a little bit more resources going into there from the governments, working with other regional organizations, as well as the local entities, would be the way to go. I think this is an opportunity now to really invest and also work with the private sector. What Sanjay was talking about, one of the things that is absent is the relationship between the UN agencies with the government with the private sector. I think we need to enhance the relationship and tap on those resources that are available out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Sanjay.
Well, thanks again, Stefan. And I would like to borrow a statement from Steve Blair, embrace the occasion. I would say that embrace the occasion, embrace the digitalization we are all used to now, embrace the need of integrated geospatial ecosystem. This is something so important. This is very fundamental, that we should take advantage of this situation where we are all forced to use digital tools. We are also all forced to collaborate. So I think embrace this occasion as far as I'll consider this as the highest priority. Make it very, very mission of your organization that you have to collaborate. You have to work together. That's number one. Number two, I would like to say that the political level engagement, I wouldn't have even imagined the kind of political level awareness has gone because of this. I would suggest all the member nations of GGIM, they are the government's eyes and ears on this technology. They have to basically break the nexus. Break the nexus and go forward and tell your governments that what you need. Don't try to protect and carry forward the legacies. Try to just change that, break that nexus, and then get into this the more broader political policies. I want to just highlight one thing that what makes me feels me very good, that when the government of India announced the self-reliant campaign, one of the 8 sectors they have identified is the space and geospatial sector reforms as a response to the next generation economic campaign. And I'm involved with the Prime Minister's office in that, and the way they are thinking to open the geospatial sector can probably be phenomenal if it goes through. Similarly, you would have seen that the US Department of Commerce made a new policy on the space commerce immediately. These are the kind of opportunities the political leadership has. Go and educate your ministers about it. And it's very important that we as a national geospatial agencies get together, put together our act and deliver. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. Thank you very much for this inspiring perspective, and everybody, for leading us in thinking about these topics. And by now we have over 30 questions, so you can, this is a testament that you reached the audience's hearts and minds. I can tell you there are many questions that we can pick up also in the IGIF discussion. Some of them are overlapping. Many of the questions on what is the relationship with the SDIs and the IGIFs? How it is practically working? What are implementation experiences? How do we set priorities at the national level? How can countries share between each other, and some specialized questions on the issues of data archiving or open data. So all of these things are important, and we will also make sure that the subsequent speakers in the next 2 weeks in particular, when we can digest all of these questions, can also address some of those issues. So as I said, unfortunately today, I think we want to move forward. At this point, we are a little bit behind, but I would recommend that we still take a very important break for everybody around the world. I love how it's elegantly called a comfort and drink break. So I can also tell you that this moderator needs just something like that. So let's break for about 5 to 7 minutes. It's difficult to say the time, but let me say 15 minutes after the hour I have here. Let's come back at about 20 minutes past. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to taking this further with you.